with that, I want to introduce our speaker today. Each week we hear from different people, and some businesses are, it's their first time starting a business, or maybe they're still launching it. Some people come in and they've run a business for many years. Our speaker today is Marcus Hantla, and I think you'll be excited to hear his story a little bit because it's unique in the sense that he's had a few different businesses and he's transitioned to a new business. So give him a hand and welcome Marcus.
Yeah, thanks. Again, Marcus Hantla, how y'all doing today? I have been here in College Station since 2007. We moved here from North Carolina. I've been working in electrical construction for 7 years there, kind of cutting my teeth on the industry and home construction as well as commercial environments, and came here to go into business with my high school, well, actually middle school friend from Oklahoma, where we grew up, and actually a swimmer, graduate A&M, and still here with his family. So we came out and started a business back in 2007 called High Definition Technologies, which is now DefTech, doing residential and commercial low voltage wiring for home automation, home theaters, access control, CCTV, security, etc. And been doing that since, actually sold the company this year. During that time, started another electrical construction company back in 2010, sold that one off as well, and also purchased a business during that period of time to roll into High Definition Technologies, and then ultimately sold that off this year when I sold the bigger company off. So bought two businesses, sold two businesses, and that's kind of where I end up with what I'm currently doing, which is Gilbert and Pardue Business Advisors. We do mergers and acquisitions, or M&A as it's commonly referred to, private banking, private investment, private equity, and it's basically, if you are not familiar with M&A work, brokerage work, where we could be doing commercial real estate, residential real estate, but instead we're brokering or buying and selling businesses. And so there's a lot of different factors that go into that. Basically the process is identifying first a company that is ripe for a sale, and that can be a number of different factors. Primarily we are focused on baby boomers who are looking to exit the market, have a business, don't have children they're wanting to leave the company to, or don't have any interest in continuing to run the company, but they're looking for an exit strategy. And that's kind of where we come into play. We identify those people through a list or just contacts in the community and get in touch with them, and then we do what is called a financial review on the company, or a FinRev. We send in CPAs who are trained for this type of process. They call it running a process on a business. And it's very different from what your CPA would do when you turn over your books at the end of the year. We do not report to the IRS. Our job, in fact, is to do exactly the opposite of what the IRS is looking for. People in business talk about having 2 or even 3 or 4 sets of books. The reason for that is, one, you report as little profit to the IRS as possible, so you don't have to pay taxes on those numbers. You do capital expenditures and things like that at the end of the year, do growth things for the company and spend the money that would be reported as profit otherwise. We come in and do the exact opposite of that, where we take all of the things that you don't report and do them as add backs, where we add them back into the balance sheet to show the highest level of profit available for your company, so that you can then take that and turn it into a multiplier for resale of the company. And so our job is to come in, have our CPAs, not artificially, but as much as possible, inflate that number to a point where you can then apply a multiple to that and then go sell that company. And so a lot of people get confused, and we talk to people, and their first question I hear from everybody is, well, I've got a CPA, why do I need to have you guys come in and do this? And it's like, we can go off of the number that your CPA is going to report to the IRS, but it is going to be low, and you are not going to get what your company is worth, by doing that. That is a terrible strategy. And so it's walking the business owner through that process, if you will, of educating them on how to drive up the value of their business and actually give the most amount of money that they can for it. We are very much seller side representation. We do have a buy side M&A department that is, there's a China wall between the two of us that is very strong on the buy side and very strong on the sell side, but we don't mix and match because that's not how you can best facilitate the negotiation process. So we keep the two separate, and there's a number of different interested parties, whether it's other competitive businesses and private equity groups that come in that are looking for companies to purchase, and they all have their various reasons, whether it's a roll-up, taking a bunch of different companies and rolling them into one organization and then making them a big company that they can then take and flip that company, either take it public or sell it off individual parts. And that's more on the private equity side, but there's also, like I said, competitive businesses out there that are looking to buy, and they've got their own reasons for what they're looking for in the marketplace. And so we identify those people, and once the financial review process is done, we then take a analysis, and we create a bunch of different marketing documents and put them together and send them out to the buy side groups that we think would be interested in this particular business, and begin the process of marketing that company. And that takes a bunch of different turns. We have graphic design, we have social media, we have internet media and things like that that we tap on, as well as relationships. And so that's kind of a key deal, is having as large of a network as possible of interested buyers and private equity groups that we can tap to come into the negotiation phase. And once we've identified the number, built the number, added the multiplier to the number, we then take that and try and get 3, 4, 5, 6 different competing bids to come in on that business, which again, the whole purpose is to drive that value of the company up as high as possible. A lot of statistics out there. There's actually a website where you can market your business, bizbuysell.com, and I think the statistic is something in the neighborhood of like 24% of the companies that list on bizbuysell.com actually get a successful closed or transaction. And so the odds are definitely stacked against individuals going out there and trying to do this on their own versus having somebody come in and give them valid representation and work with them on running a process on their business. And that's kind of where we live and breathe day to day, is identifying those companies and working with them to put their market out, or their business out on the market. And our success rate right now is about 98%, and the reason that it's 98 and not 100 is because one of the companies got into the process, we went through all the financials, and then the guy decided he didn't want to sell. Well, that's nobody's real fault, it's just kind of what happened. So we do have a very high close rate on being able to start and go all the way to successful close with clients that we bring on and actually commit to the process. So.
Excellent.
There you
Questions?
Yeah, I got one. So you've sold 2 companies, right?
Personally, yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
So talk about the coaching that, because kind of met Gilbert and Pardue selling your company, that they gave you in transitioning your company as something you ran as just your personal business and into running it more like a corporation for sale? Like, is that, like, how did that transition work for you as far as, you know, hey, sometimes we treat our own private companies as personal piggy banks. We're writing off trips here, we're writing off trips there. I mean, what kind of, I guess, counseling or
Sure.
advising what was that process like? I guess?
Gilbert and Pardue, we actually, as part of our advisory team, the advisory portion of our company actually does handle fractional CFO work. When we send in our CPAs, they also act as fractional CFOs for smaller businesses, and we do that advisory piece focused mainly. How many people have heard of EOS in here when I say EOS? We've got two. The employee operating system, is that anybody ringing any bells? Okay. Well, we are certified, trained, and actually conduct seminars in EOS training for small businesses, where we go in and actually coach them on how to run their business to maximize value and kind of keep business operators and owners typically stay in the operation phase and never make it over to the executive phase of running a business. They tend to be in the service world. I'm a plumber, I'm a fantastic plumber, and I'm going to operate as a plumber. Well, that's not running a business, that's doing plumbing. And so it's kind of taking them from the operation side and forcing them into the executive side, where they can actually work on the business rather than in the business, and in turn drive that value up so that they can maximize their return when they do try and settle. And the process is 4 to 6 month minimum on businesses, and turning them around for sale, it is an extremely long process. Just by nature of, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that we've got to bring into account and get down on paper and actually prove up why our valuation is what it is. And I've got to stand behind everything that, you know, we create and justify why that number is what that is. But that's the process that we get into with the business owner on the backside. So.
And do you find, oh, go ahead. I was just going to do one follow. And do you find, like, changing behavioral habits of those people transitioning from being a plumber to a business owner, is that something that's easy?
No,
or?
no. and I mean, I am that, right?
Right.
You know,
Because you've lived it. That's
low voltage wiring, and, you know, was able to go in and program a remote and do all kinds of things, you know, and create a home theater system that would just blow your socks off. But when it came to P&Ls and balance sheets and things like that, it was very much a learn on the job, OJT, on the job training, where I'm like, okay, that didn't work, let me try this, that, or the other. And, you know, you're falling on your face over and over again to try and get to where you're going, and it very much was a trial and error type of situation versus us coming in and coaching and having you know, our CPAs run $100 million companies and sit on boards of many others and are very familiar with Sarbanes-Oxley and all of these crazy things that an entrepreneur is like going, what? You know, I mean, it's not something that we live and breathe or want to on a day in, day out basis.
Gotcha.
So. Yes.
How do you manage, like, and whenever you all come in, how do you manage, like, communicating to the employees and so that they don't, you know, see that the business is about to sell and jump ship and all that kind of stuff? Okay.
Not at all. In fact, when I call on businesses and things like that, I am everything I can do to not identify who I am because I don't want the word getting out at all that there's any kind of a process going on in the company for resale or anything like that. I am coming in under the shade of darkness the best way that I can to avoid having any of, you know, the information get out to the workers in the company, because people you know, the book, Don't Move My Cheese, you know, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And everybody starts running for the door because they think that they're going to lose their job and this, and, you know, it's a very delicate thing to have to negotiate when you're only going to be working primarily with the CEO of the organization, and it's up to the CEO to decide who they want to let know that the company is getting prepared for sale or merger. And I stay as far away from that as I possibly can. And I mean, it's even, you know, the secretary may ask, who's calling, why, what's this in regards to? Yep, nope, we'll try back later, thanks, you know. I mean, I wave off as fast as, you know, I can on any of that stuff coming to them.
So that confidentiality works, I guess, also both ways, because you don't want people knowing, I guess, what that they're going to sell until they're ready to sell, because their competitors could also use that against them. And so that's kind of, y'all are just behind the scenes helping them with their, advising them on their books, and but I mean, so there's no like advertising going on or anything in between, or how does that work?
That's absolutely accurate. If it does come down to getting pressed on who I am or why I'm there or why the CPA is there, we're coaching, we're business coaching. It rarely ever, you know, if somebody was paying super keen attention to what was going on, they might be able to figure it out. But yeah, we try to stay as under the radar as possible during that, because your employees are the greatest value and greatest asset in any given organization. And to create any kind of unrest or insecurity in the business is an absolute negative, you know, because then you're doing damage control. And nobody wants to be dealing with that on the backside. So. Yes.
So I'm guessing if you're like similar firms that I've worked with in the past, so you're paid when the sale happens, but a lot of times companies have maybe 2 or 3 years worth of work to get their processes in place, to get their books in order to reclaw some of that revenue for value, and then find someone and go through that due diligence period. So I mean, do you just work for someone for 3 years and then hope to God that the sale goes through and they don't back out it in like the one client?
Well, and very similar, like I said, you know, this is brokerage, and similar to selling commercial real estate and things like that, it can be a very long sales cycle. Our costs are hard costs that we do charge to have the CPAs come in and run the actual process. We're just covering their time. Because they are not commissioned or anything like that. But yes, you're correct. It is a commission-driven organization and very reliant on that business selling. And so that is our motivation, is to get you to the close, get you to the table and have a check cut, because that's when we get paid. So it is a very long process. It is something that our motivation and, you know, incentive, as it were, is very targeted to that sale going through. But yeah, we do have a fee to have basic, again, just cover cost of driving to a location. We are not entirely dedicated. We've sold companies in Idaho, Ohio, and all, you know, we're throughout the United States, so flights and things like that come into play, and getting people to locations, the company covers that cost, but it's negligible when it comes to actual sell of the company. So, yes.
So yeah, thinking about the financials of it, I know really, you probably relate to this, but every business owner, whether they admit or not, sort of has a number in their mind that the business is worth. Even if that's just, you know, what would it take if someone came in with a blank check?
Right.
In your experience, typically coming in from the first introduction to them to the actual valuation, rarely is anyone right on that number, right?
Right.
But do you find that the average business owner in your experience is way overshooting that number, undershooting it? I have a follow-up question to that, but
that is a loaded and interesting question. There's a breakover point which I found to be very weird, that a smaller organization, our company typically focuses on companies in the 5 million EBITDA up to 100 million, because once you get to 100 million, that's when the Goldman Sachs of the world and things like that start coming into the market and going, well, we're going to do this, you know, and these are the guys, you know, flying in from New York City on private jets and everything like that, that it becomes worth their while to get out of bed to come represent your company. We're a smaller boutique firm that represents entrepreneurs and smaller businesses, and that's kind of where, you know, they're not going to have any interest because their overhead is so high and so vast that it takes the same amount of time to sell a small business that it does a huge business, and so they're going to focus on the huge businesses just by nature of the market. But when I get into companies that are kind of the mom and pop shops, they way overvalue the price of their business that they're wanting to sell for, and you're going, there's no way anybody's ever going to pay this. And then you get into a $10 or $20 million EBITDA company, and they way undervalue the value of what they can get for their company, and you're going, this is really weird. And I think it's just because the number gets so big with the multipliers that they're like, there's no way we can make this happen. And we constantly come in and are showing them, no, actually, this is what the market's willing to pay for your business, and it just blows them away. And so it's really neat to see those kind of entities come in where, you know, you've got $10 million in profit, and they're like, well, yeah, if I can just have somebody stroke me a check for $10 million, there's a lot of people who would take that on the spot, but we can sell that company for $34, $35 million, and they've got no idea that was what the value of their company was. And, you know, it's again, industry specific as to what the multiplier is, but, you know, I do see that quite a bit where these smaller mom and pops are just, you know, valuing their company. I'm going to retire, you know, and you're going, there's nothing really tangible here for anybody. If you leave, you're the greatest employee of this business, and this is going to crater without you here. And so there is a breakover point where small mom and pops way overvalue, and larger companies are undervaluing for some reason.
That makes sense. The follow-up to that is looking at I guess especially the bigger ones where you're bringing in fractional CFO, your CPAs, you know, advisors.
Mm-hmm.
Just roughly in your mind, what type of increase in value do you feel like you can pretty regularly bring to the value of the business just based on y'all coming in and EOS and cleaning up the books and things like that?
And it depends on the client and where they're at a lot of the time as to how much of the coaching we actually do. If they're ripe to sell, you know, a competent CPA, whether they work for us or anybody, can walk in and go, stop doing that, don't do that, do this, and make some rapid adjustments instantaneously just by walking in and knowing what they see. They can fix stuff in a hurry. Some of the other stuff, you know, kind of takes a while. A lot of companies, and I dealt with this yesterday on a phone call. We were working with a company back in July, and they were, well, I've got a new deal we're adding. You know, we got a new metal building out back, and we're going to be able to do some more fabrication and get this stuff up online and put some money into the company. And I really think our numbers are going to turn down, and I'll be able to add another $1 million of profit, you know, et cetera. And you're like, okay, well, let's see how it goes. I talked to him yesterday. He goes, yeah, that never happened. That didn't work. And the real damage is not so much that he didn't get that extra $1 million of profit in the door. The damage is that when it comes to a multiplier, are you better off running a company for another 6 months or another year to get an extra $500,000 or $1 million of profit to the bottom line, or are you better off riding the wave of the market and getting the higher multiple of, you know, there's multiples that have been going all the way up to 12x in renewables and waste management and things like that right now. And it's because, I mean, we've all seen the stock market. There's plenty of money, plenty of equity going around out there, and it's the highest we've ever seen for sellers capturing the most dollars for their company right now. But that is not going to continue. And so you go, if you catch that wave at the top and you're getting a 12x multiple, and then you wait 6 months and it drops to a 9, does your $500,000 or $1 million really matter at the end of the day? No, you're better off selling now when the multiple's higher and not having to actually prove that stuff out. And so there's coaching on that side as well, where you're trying to educate the seller as to what's the best thing for you to be doing in this, given marketplace. Because again, I think, once we hit the highest stock market we've ever had, et cetera, that does not go on indefinitely. At some point.
The timing with the stock market, but also you mentioned baby boomers earlier.
Right.
It's, I imagine we're starting to peak out in the next few years with the number of baby boomers and older that are exiting their businesses.
Right.
Hopefully
And
as well.
there's a huge opening right now for the younger generation to step in and buy some of these older, well-established, kind of less than sexy businesses that are out there from baby boomers. I mean, go pick up trash on a commercial site. They've been doing business for 30 years. This guy's put 2 kids through college. It's not super sexy to sit there and say, oh, I go pick up trash on construction sites, but you're gonna make a great living doing it. Same thing, and that's just, anything construction industry, cutting concrete, plumbing, electrical, look for these kind of businesses, laundry. I mean, the list goes on and on as to well-established businesses that are out there. They're not gonna be, fintech or blockchain or any of this, super buzzword cool stuff out there. But we don't live in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. We're just out hardworking people doing honest day's work. And so go find one of those businesses that are looking to exit and ripe for picking, and that'd be a great way to get started in the industry as a graduate, a recent graduate, or somebody looking to go out on their own. Yeah.
So speaking of that, are you finding millennials interested in those types of businesses?
No.
Or, I didn't think so. I mean, that's part of the problem, right?
That's it.
Is finding a buyer.
That would be my advice to them, but yes, no, I'm not.
Like guys like that, like me, that are ready to bail. Their kids don't have any interest in the business,
Yep.
and now I got to find a buyer. And I know some people personally that look for buyers, and they didn't talk to you obviously, but they finally just shut it down because they couldn't.
That's right.
find a
That's
buyer.
that 24% that go out on biz buy sell, and there's
yeah,
nothing there.
and
Yeah.
They were lucky to get something for the real estate,
Mhm.
but the business itself, they got nothing.
Right.
But yeah, the millennials, they don't want this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge.
They don't listen to me. I don't know. I'm kidding.
The doctor's office in town, but well established, tried to get employees to buy in for equity. And the problem they're having with the millennials is they just want to be employees. Yeah. They don't want to have to run anything. Right. And so they ended up just selling to a larger hospital because they couldn't get any employer buy-in. They just wanted to do their job and go home.
And that is very much a the baby boomers.
And
even
technically,
have
I'm a
kids,
millennial,
and the kids
so-
don't want to take over the company.
Exactly.
I mean, you
By
can
1 year.
groom your child from birth
Yeah.
to take over your company, and they get there and they go,
Yeah. They're just, it's too much work. Or they're focused elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it has definitely been something that, and in what we do, I mentioned, one of the primary places that we go are larger public companies such as Waste Management and Kinderhook and things like that. And the reason that we do that, they are looking to expand nationally, and they'll buy your company for the licenses and the certifications you have and blow everything off. But now all of a sudden, Insta company in Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever, because they've got the licensing already established and in place, and they'll continue to just pick up, you know, your RCRA Part B license where they can, you know, take hazardous waste or whatever and do that in the state of Georgia. They've got no interest really in the day-to-day operations of the business you were running. They just buy it up for the licensing. And so it's a different strategy on that level, where as you mentioned, a millennial or, you know, a Generation X could walk in there and have a phenomenal company and, you know, do great for the next 20 years or however long they wanted to run it. But yeah, it is a very different mindset than, you know, what we've had in the past of people wanting to run businesses and be entrepreneurs and strike out on their own.
So one more question.
I have one.
Okay.
As I'm a millennial, and I am looking for opportunities because there are a lot of boomers wanting to get out. Is that something you can help identify a company that would be a good fit? But in addition to that, would you be able to also help those clients secure the capital needed to make that happen? Because there's a difference between wanting to do something and there being opportunity and there being capital funds to actually go make that happen.
Right, and with the stock market, the SBA has some phenomenal products available. You know, he's smiling at us. There's plenty of different avenues to go to fund a business, but yes, getting that structured and established, we do help facilitate that process, but it's not something we really focus our efforts on per se. I mean, the business has to stand on its own 2 feet. Cash flow is king, and if you get into a business that is cash flowing, profitable, etc., you're not going to have a hard time finding financing to make an acquisition happen. I mean, it's by nature self-sustaining, and it can pay for itself. You've just got to be willing to step into that role and, you know, go through the paperwork process. And it can take, you know, again, when I go back to my 6-month estimate and things like that on a rapid close of a sale of a business, that plays into it. Certainly securing financing is a huge key factor in that. So.
Great. Well, last thing we always ask is what ways can we as a community help you and support what you're doing?
Yep. Again, I'm broker, and, you know, any kind of information or companies out there interested in being sold or acquired, we do pay a commission for people who bring us stuff that gets taken to close. And so if you know of anybody who's interested and looking for an exit, I'd love to have an introduction, and we rely on referrals and, you know, be willing to pass the hat, as it were, and take care of you on the backside. So we've had one guy, the guy doesn't even work for our company, but he's referred 3 businesses that have actually gone to close, and he's made as much off of doing M&A as he has in his primary job in 1 year. So it's kind of like, keep at it, you know, it's great. But yeah, we do work off of referrals, and you come across anybody, you know, appreciate an introduction. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'll give you official 1MillionCups mug. Thank you for presenting today. And did a drawing for the check-in, and Nick Logan is the winner of a 2nd cup. So is that Nick? Excellent. Congrats. Thanks for joining today. Yeah, absolutely. So today is the last 1MillionCups of 2019. Arguably of the decade. We were